Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're tuning in today. My guest today is my friend, Bill Walston. Bill is a sought-after business and tax strategist in the real estate investing community. He's been an active investor for nearly 4 decades, as well as an author, a mentor, and a coach. His passion is teaching and creating strategies that help real estate investors do more deals, make more money, and live a tax-deductible lifestyle. And who doesn't want that? Bill holds an undergraduate degree in accounting and finance and a graduate degree in tax law. He lives in the beautiful mountains of East Tennessee with his fur kid, Bailey. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hey, Sharon, how you doing?
I'm good. So how's your weather there?
It was kind of chilly this morning. We actually were under a freeze warning. So it's that time of the year. Notice the attire.
Yeah, about like it is in Kentucky here. So let's start out today. I think, a lot of people are familiar with you and what you do, but let's talk about a little bit about your backstory quickly, about how you got started in real estate investing, and particularly what made you gravitate toward creative financing.
Okay. Well, you summed it up pretty good. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting and finance, right? Graduate degree in tax law. And of course, to get certified as a CPA, you have to do an internship, right? So I did my internship. I knew right away that it was not going to work for me in a general accounting firm unless I owned a sucker. So that's what I did. I actually started my practice almost immediately out of school. My first clients happened to be real estate investors and agents. And how that happened, I don't know, but it did. So they found me somehow. And that was the bulk of my client list. And with working with them, it's pretty easy to see that the profits were on the other side of the table with real estate investors. So I sold my practice out to my partner, decided I was going to go full-time real estate investing, and I was never going to do anything in accounting again. Right? It's a good thing that I love it, right? Because my clients were still after me saying, you're still going to help us with our taxes and stuff like that. So I said, well, I'll help you with tax strategy. I will not help you prepare your tax returns. So I did walk away from that part, but I work still with the strategy. As far as creative real estate, I started investing in the mid 80s. Do you remember what the interest rate was in the mid 80s?
Yes.
Right? We may be the only ones on this podcast who remember that. but there it was, 21% prime interest rate, right? So of course we did everything that we could creatively because we didn't want to have to take and refinance those really low interest rate loans that did still exist at that point in time. So I did a lot of sub-2 deals that moved over into deals where the owner was, doing a seller carryback, that type of thing. So it's kind of become my specialty. And you know me, I hate banks, right? I will say that up front. I do not like having to go to banks and borrow the money for any of my investing. So if I can take over an existing loan or create a deal, right, then that's what I'll do. And, these types of deals are made. They are not found. You can't just go out and buy a list of sub-2 deals, right? I get really amused sometimes. Well, how do you find these sub-2 deals? Well, I don't. You kind of go out and make them after you find out what motivates the seller.
Well, and that's what I wanted to talk about today in particular was master lease options, the MLO, as some people call them, because I think there is a lot of misconceptions around master lease options. And people say, no, I want to own the property. I don't want to do an MLO. So let's talk about a little bit about what exactly is a master lease option. People are familiar with lease and an option. Most people are. But when it's the master lease option, they're a little bit lost on that. So what makes this strategy different? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, what's a little bit different, and it's interesting that you say that, because technically, any time that you rent a property, right, and you hold the lease, and you have the right to sublet that property, that's a master lease. Okay, so theoretically, if you do what we typically call a sandwich lease option, that's a master lease. Okay. But generally with the master lease option method, we're talking about commercial property, right? We're
Right.
talking about multifamily units. We're talking about storage units. We're talking about strip malls. Any of those can be taken over and controlled with a master lease and an option, or just a master lease, right? You
Mhm.
control the property. You don't own the property. And who was it, Rockefeller, who said, own nothing, control everything, right? That's typically what the master lease option method allows you to do. So you can take over a property, control the cash flow, increase the value of that property without having to own the property itself. So with the master lease option method, that's what we're talking about. I specialize in units between usually between 10 and 50 units is what I go after. And I take control of the property by getting the property under master lease, right? Then I have subtenants. So all of the people who now rent units in that apartment complex are actually subtenants under my master lease.
Mhm. And they pay you.
And they pay me, right? And then I will pay a fixed amount, whatever amount I have negotiated with the owner of the property. Okay. I pay him that fixed amount. And that's usually the net operating income is how we approach it. And we say, okay, we're going to guarantee your net operating income. And that's the amount that we negotiate. That's a fixed amount. And it remains stable over the lifetime of my lease. And then any rent increases or anything like that that I get from the subtenants, that belongs to me. So that's actually how I profit on the cash flow.
Okay, I'm pretty sure you you just lost most people there. So let's back up just a little bit. So you've got the property, you control the property, you have the master lease, and from there, let's talk about first of all, how did you get to that number, that NOI number with the seller? So
Okay.
well, even before that, though, nobody ever woke up that was wanting cash for their property and went, okay, I don't want any cash. Let's back up even a
Right.
little bit further. They never woke up and said that I'll just lease this
Oh, yeah,
property.
I'm going to do a master lease option today,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, they don't say that.
let's start there. So let's go back to what's really the beginning. Somebody's trying to sell a property and they want cash. You don't want to give them cash. Maybe they want too much for the property, whatever the situation is. So what is the starting point here? The buying conversation with a motivated seller.
Okay. Usually what I do is find sellers who are motivated to get rid of their property. Usually we call them tired landlords. They're just tired of the struggle of having to work with the tenants in the property, right? They love the cash, right? They want that. But sometimes the only reason they're selling is because they have that problem with the tenants. They're just tired. Okay.
Right.
So I go in and I negotiate with them and I find out if that's the reason, right? So sellers have different motivations for selling. If I have a seller who absolutely wants the cash and has to get out of the property and they're going to do something different with that cash, right? Then they may not be a good seller for this type of deal. However, if their motivation is that they're just tired, they're tired of the struggle with the property, but they really don't need to get rid of the property and put the cash into something else, that's a perfect, what I call a master lease scenario. So I'll talk with them and I'll say something like, okay, what if I could guarantee you your net operating income that you're getting right now? I take over all the repairs and maintenance and responsibilities of the property. And then 3 or 4 years down the road, I actually buy the property out. Is that something we should talk about? And usually they'll say yes. So when I negotiate with them, I find out what that net operating income is. Now, remember, I said I'm taking over the repairs and the maintenance and stuff like that. So they aren't going to get gross rent, of course. And that's where you kind of have to negotiate with the seller, because when they think how much they're going to be getting, their mind goes to, okay, I'm renting this property out for like $600 a month per unit, and that's what I want to get. And they forget the fact that they had operating expenses and stuff like that coming out of those amounts. So they're not netting the 600. So you work with what they were actually netting. Okay. And that's what you guarantee them each month on a monthly basis. And generally, once you've shown them how that actually works, they understand, they get it pretty quickly. because they
Okay.
don't have any responsibilities, right?
Now, does that mean repairs and maintenance? Where do capital expenses come into play here?
Okay. Capital expenditures are still the responsibility of the owner of the property, right? By law. Okay. A lot of people think I'm going to transfer all of the expenses to the tenant. We can't do that, right? So in my contracts with the seller, I'm only responsible for ordinary repairs and maintenance. Any CapEx expenditures like a new roof, a heating and air conditioning unit that has to be replaced, they're still responsible for those.
Parking lots and all the
Parking
big things.
all the biggies. And the way it reads, it's basically anything that Internal Revenue Service says you have to capitalize and depreciate. They
Okay.
are responsible for that.
Okay. So that makes sense. So the seller who is, we all know that being a landlord is not a lot of people's favorite thing. So if they could get the money without having to deal with the tenants, then that's a good solution for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah,
If
love
they
it.
know there's going to be a buyout down the road, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So you do what everybody does in a typical real estate deal. You should have to show them the benefits of your offer. And maybe your offer of a master lease option at the price they want is actually a better offer than a lower cash price today.
Right, right. Yeah, and basically, with the process, you think of the master lease option. We already said what it was, where you come in and take over, but there's a step-by-step process with that, right? So first you have to find the property, then you have to negotiate with the seller, right, as to what their deal is going to be, and you kind of we say lock it up, right, with the master lease and an option agreement. Then you come in and you actually take over the responsibilities, and you run the property and generate the cash flow. And then, as you said, you have certain exit strategies after the term of that lease is over, right? And that's when you're going to decide whether you're going to actually buy the property, maybe you're going to flip it to somebody else, that type of thing. But the sellers do like the fact that, hey, I'm making the same money that I was making off of this property before, and I don't have any of the headaches.
How long is a typical master lease option term?
Mine generally run for a 5-year period. Okay, that's what I want it for. So I go in with a master lease, and I want an option to purchase that property during the 5-year period. And here's the reason, right? You are betting on the fact that you're going to be able to go in and you're going to be able to do some value plays. And by value play, I mean cosmetic improvements, increase rents, those types of things. And the value of a commercial property is in its cash flow, not necessarily in any type of an appraisal or anything like that. So our objective is to increase the cash flow of the property, thereby increasing the value. Okay. And the value is going to be much greater at the end of the 5-year period than it was, at the beginning of the lease. So what we're trying to do is increase the value, where we will be able to get financing or whatever we want to on that property at based on the higher value, and then we pay the lower amount.
And that's a key point here to understand, that you have a strategy in place to increase the value of the property. So when it's time for you to refinance that property and actually buy it, if that's what you decide to do, and hopefully most properties you buy, that's your goal, unless, something were to go south. Your goal is to put off the actual purchase price at a time when you can get probably 100% financing on what you owe. Would that be fair to say that?
Oh, that's exactly right. And somebody says, well, why 5 years? Well, you got to remember, you've got to have time to get those value plays up and running, right? And I sometimes have sellers question, say, well, why do you want to take so long? And I just look at them, I try to say it in a nice way, but basically what you say is, hey, you didn't ruin this property in a year. I'm not going to be able to turn it around in a year. You know what I'm saying? So you have to have time to get the value plays working and up and running to increase that value. And don't forget, I don't have to wait for the full 5 years, right? The option is anytime during the 5-year period. So if I wanted to exercise my option sooner, I could do that.
Okay. Now, people are probably wondering, and I kind of have known you a long time, so I kind of know the answer to this. But when it comes to value plays and repairs, what is an acceptable condition of a property for you? What do you want? What, I know you don't like to do big rehabs.
Oh, no, I don't.
So,
You do know
but
me.
I do know you. So, but what is an acceptable level of, because remember, folks, you don't own this property. You are
That's right.
leasing this property. And this is a key point. If you're buying straight out a multifamily property, then that's your property. You can put the money in, whatever. This is a different scenario. So you're going to have a different comfort level with putting your money into a property that you don't own. So
That's exactly
what's
right.
your answer to that?
Okay, I do not do full remodels. Okay, I will do cosmetic, and by cosmetic I mean slapping some paint on there, maybe doing a little landscaping if the budget, if the cash flow allows it, putting up new apartment door numbers, new mailboxes, those types of things that you're not going to have to put a lot of cash in, right? Because Bill does not use his own cash for anything if he can
Right.
help it, right? So I want to make sure that it'll come out of the cash flow. And sometimes and that's why I say we need the longer time to get the value, the value plays working and up and running, because I'm not going to do a lot of that out of pocket. I want to either recoup the amount that I have to put into it pretty quickly, okay, or I will wait until I've been able to increase rents and use the extra rent to pay for some of the landscaping and that type of thing. So I'm not going to go into anything with any type of full remodel. So if I see a property that's got boarded up windows, caution signs up and stuff like that, that's not what I'm looking for. Now, I've got a friend who does do that. He goes in with the idea of a full remodel, but he makes sure that that owner knows up front, say, hey, look, you're not making any money off this right now. Right? Remember, we're telling the owner that they're going to get their net operating income. Well, if there's no net operating income, then the owner's not making anything anyway. So what's happening is he's either got a negative cash flow, right? Or he's having to pull money out of his pocket to pay any underlying mortgage if there is one or something like that. So my guy goes in with the same thing, says, hey, I'll guarantee your current net operating income. Well, there's no net operating income. So he works it out with the sellers and says, hey, what I want you to do is let me come in and take over the property. It's all under contract, stuff like that. And he says that I will pay you net operating income based on the number of units that are rented right now, right? So if there are units that are producing that net income, then he pays the net operating income, right? And then what he will do is, as he gets these rehabbed using private money, none of his own money, right? He'll use private money for it. As he gets them rehabbed, then he will start paying the owner based on that new income. He doesn't pay the new rental rate. He pays the old rental rate that the owner would have rented it out at. So he's still going to have some difference in there, but it's almost like a performance basis. As the apartment begins to perform a little bit better, then he will pay the owner a bit more cash flow, right? But Bill does not do that. That's
I guess my question is, why would you do that? If you're buying it on net operating expenses, why would you? That's your value play you're giving away. Why? What's his thinking?
Well, you're not really giving your value play away if there was the net operating income there. And I see where you're going. You could say, hey, anything above what you're making right now is mine to keep. But there are a lot of owners who don't want to do that because that means they would be getting almost nothing off of their property.
Right.
So they kind of want to participate in that new construction type or the rehabs or stuff like that. So it really depends on what he negotiates with his owner of the property. But I guess my point was he's willing to go in and do that, where Bill is not going to go in and do that. And he only does it on properties that he knows he's going to buy. Because remember, if he chose not to buy this property and chose not to exercise his option, all of these rehabs and stuff that he did like that would revert back over to the owner of the property.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people are probably wondering, in this scenario, let's go back over a little bit how you analyze a property
Mhm.
to do a projection. Nobody can know what's going to happen for sure in 3 to 5 years, but you're
Right.
projecting what you think is going to happen based on today's numbers and then your outlook. So how
Mhm.
does someone begin to analyze a master lease option property?
Okay, when I start analyzing, I have to get the numbers from what the seller has right now, right? That's our starting point, what their
Mhm.
financials look like right now. And that gives us an idea of what the potential expenses are going to be and what the rental income is going to be. And, there are lots of ways to project rents as to whether the rents are going to go up, whether they're going to go down compared to what they are right now.
Mhm.
And the average apartment, the way their expenses run, is usually 35 to 45% of
Okay.
expenses, right? So that's my starting point, and that's what I look at. So for instance, if I take a look at a owner's financial statement and they're showing 60% expenses, right? I know that their expenses are way too high, and I know there are going to be some value plays there.
Mhm.
I don't know for sure what those value plays are going to be yet, but I know there are value plays there because their ratios are way out of balance, right?
Mhm.
And so I will take a look at it and I'll say, okay, what could be happening? Well, I look first at there are two things, right? Either the rents are too low
Mhm.
and are not covering those true actual expenses, or they've overstated their expenses, right?
Mhm.
Usually it's the former, not the latter with these folks. Their rents haven't been increased in the last 10 years because so-and-so had, remember, I'm looking at mom and pops, right?
Mhm.
Usually they know the tenants,
Mhm.
and they may not have increased Mary's rent in the last 10 years that she's lived there. So you take a look at those types of items and immediately whether you're going to have some value plays you're going to be able to put into place right then and there or not. And then when you do the projections out, I still use that ratio. That's the only thing that you have to go by. And I
Mhm.
look to make sure that my expenses are going to be between that 30, 35 to 45% ratio.
Now, how friendly are banks when you I mean, you could put together, the syndications are big now, and that's another whole conversation. But let's say for the sake of argument that you do go get traditional financing. How are banks friendly when it comes to this kind of a deal, or do you have to jump through a bunch of hoops?
Oh,
How
you'd
does
have to
that
jump
work?
through a lot of hoops. And here's why. Banks don't like distressed properties. And that's what
Mhm.
we're looking at, right? We're looking at properties that are not A properties. They're not even B properties that are run well,
Mhm.
because usually, okay, they're not performing. We call them non-performing, right? Or
Mhm.
underperforming properties because of poor management in a lot of cases,
Mhm.
right? And banks don't like to finance these types of deals. And that's one of the negotiating points I use with sellers and say, hey, look, one of the reasons that you haven't been able to get rid of this property is people can't get financing on it.
Mhm.
So here's what I would like to do. Let me do this, get it up running up to snuff where I can go get financing on it if I want to do that. So banks are not real friendly on this. Another thing too, a lot of people use this to enter into the multifamily market, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and because I got bit by the multifamily bug just like everybody else did, right? You start with single family and everybody has this thing, oh, I need to go back into multifamily, right? Trust me, it's not always what it's cracked up to be. I love it, right? I do love multifamily investing and a master lease option. I love those. But I still enjoy doing the single family type thing too. But if you get bit by that bug, some of the obstacles that you're going to run into is you don't have experience yet, right? You don't have the money, so you can't go in and make these huge down payments like some people could do, right?
Mhm.
If you wanted to do that, you'd have to pull in partners and, like you said, syndications and things of that nature. So this is a perfect scenario, right? Because if you're using a master lease option, let's say that you only did this once, Sharon, you got a master lease option method, right? And your lease an option ran for a 5-year period.
Mhm.
Okay. And at the end of that 5-year period, you got a better performing property, and you go into the bank and you say, hey, I'd like to borrow money on this property, right? No longer are you inexperienced. You got
Exactly.
5 years of experience now, right? Not
Mhm.
only that, you have 5 years of financial records, and you can show that to the banker and say, look where this property was 5 years ago when I started looking at it and taking it over, and look where we are today, right? So you've got a track record.
Yeah.
So now you can go in. But if you wanted to get that like 5 years before with no experience, okay, no partners,
Mhm.
that would have been a lot of hoops that you would have had to have jumped
Yeah.
through.
So it's much easier to go back at the end of your option term, whenever you decide that you want to exercise your option.
Absolutely
Then,
is.
then it's a lot easier, because hopefully your net operating expenses, that whole ratio looks better. You're making more money. You can show that you've got an efficient property and that you have lowered all of these things that were wrong to begin with, if you have to actually go down that path. But it's a much easier way to enter the multifamily space, especially if you're dealing with mom and pop properties.
Exactly. And that's what we deal with. That's our
Now,
niche.
where do you find these mom and pop properties?
Okay, there are a lot of places that you can find those. You can actually buy a list from List Source of
Mhm.
people who own the different types of properties, right? You do a search for multifamily. There are places such as City Feet, which is a place you can find them listed. CIMLS, which is like the MLS for commercial property. You
Mhm.
won't believe this. My favorite is LoopNet, right?
Mhm.
And people always tell me, say, Bill, why are you looking on LoopNet? LoopNet is where properties, where deals go to die.
Go
Have you ever
die.
heard that?
Yeah.
That's where deals go to die. And I say, thank you, because that's what I'm looking for, dead deals. Okay. So I want deals that haven't gone through. So I will actually go to LoopNet and look for properties in my target market, and I will just request financial statements or financial package from those. And then I'll
Mhm.
analyze those based on my investing criteria, which is very important. Well, the first things you have to do, regardless of whatever type of investing you're going to do, is to determine your investing criteria, right? So mine for commercial property might be, I'm looking for Class B properties in nice neighborhoods, 5 to 50 units or 10 to 50 units, right? That's what I'll tell a broker that I'm looking
Mhm.
for, and say, what do you got? What can you send me?
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that's my favorite deal finding strategy. And then what I do is I will just send out, offers to those selected properties.
Mhm. Okay. So it's kind of similar to single family, but
Oh,
not.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very
Yeah,
similar though.
it is very, very similar.
So
You
do
can
you?
take a lot of your creative strategies that we use for single family, and you
Mhm.
can translate that over into multifamily. You have to just tweak it a little bit.
Mhm. If someone wanted to take a stab at this, do you have some final advice for them?
Sure, do it, right? I think everybody should try this if they wanted to. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, you should never do any of this if you shouldn't go into commercial until you're experienced," right? Well, I kind of
Mhm.
disagree with that. But if you use a master lease option, okay, what is your risk?
Mhm.
Got to ask yourself, what's your risk? You're not buying the property.
Mhm.
Okay, you don't have to exercise your option.
Mhm.
Right. It's one of those, I used to call it a try it before you buy it type deal,
Mhm.
because that's basically what you can do. You control the property, you control the outcomes of the property by, you're the one who determines what value plays to put in,
Mhm.
right? But yet at the end of the day, if it doesn't work for you, right, you don't have to exercise your option. You can walk away from that and it goes back to your seller, right? Or the person who owns the property. And
Mhm.
if you've done what you needed to do, they're in a better position than they were when you started this deal, because you've increased their cash flow, you've increased the value of
Mhm.
their property. But it gives you an opportunity to get in to the commercial market with very little upfront cash, right? I mean, you're going to have to spend something on advertising and
Mhm.
marketing and stuff like that, right? but very little of your own cash. Don't have to have a lot of experience. Now, you would need to be aware and educate yourself on things that are going on, but you don't have to have had years of experience in operating commercial properties.
It's a good place for people to start. Like you said, it's low risk, and you make the spread also on what you've promised the seller, and your value
And
plays, you increase the rents and all of that. So you're still making some money along the way, but with a lot less risk.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's like the cash flow. And essentially that's what you're in. You're not in necessarily for the appreciation of the property, although it's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not yours until you exercise your option.
Yeah.
Okay. But you do have the cash flow from multifamily properties. And it's not an instant thing, right? I would never recommend that anyone stop the type of investing they're doing now and all of a sudden say, okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to do master lease options. Okay. Because it just doesn't, it's like anything else. It grows up gradually over a period of time. Right. But I do encourage investors to take a look at it, especially in the market that we're in right now, market that we're going into right now. This is almost the type of market it was when I first got into master lease options.
Learning creative strategies right now is getting more important than ever. When the interest rates are low and money is freely flowing, then it's not as important. But as the interest rates go up and the banking situation tightens up, these kind of strategies are so much more important. Let me ask you this. If someone wanted to learn more about how master lease options and creative finance, I know you have some programs, so let's talk about those a little bit.
Sure. I do have programs. In fact, I'm putting together a group for next month where we're going to be working exclusively on the master lease option method. So I'll be working with people, teaching them the strategy, teaching them how my marketing strategies, how I will put together deals, how I negotiate with the sellers. So we're going to put together a group and we're just kick around the ideas and help them build their portfolios. So that is one of the things that we're doing now. I've specialized in working on creative strategies for my clients and helping them with tax strategies as well. So the group we're putting together for the next month will deal specifically with this method.
Okay. And I know that you have other programs, Bill's a coach and different things. And I know some things he's got coming your way. So be sure, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you? If they want to get on your list, they want to get your emails about all these juicy tips that you have. What's the best way for them to do that?
They can reach me at bill@billwalston.com. That's my email address, fastest way. I'm also on Facebook. I think a lot of your listeners, I know some of them personally, right? So they know me on Facebook as well. I'm always can be found there. They can send me direct messages or reach me by email.
Okay. And we'll put all those links in the show notes. Bill's pretty easy to find and he's pretty agreeable to having a conversation with you. I know that for a fact. So thanks again, Bill, for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And thanks to all the listeners that come out week after week. I would appreciate it if you would share the show and leave us a rating and a review over on iTunes. So I will
5 stars.
5 stars. So I will see you all same time, same place next week. Bye for now.